The next morning, Tom's neighbor, Mr. Green, noticed that Tom's car was still in the driveway. It was unusual. Tom was always up early, heading out for his morning jog. Concerned, Mr. Green walked over to Tom's house and knocked on the door. There was no answer. Mr. Green tried the door, finding it unlocked. He stepped inside, calling out for Tom, but there was no response. The house was eerily quiet, the air thick with an uneasy stillness. As Mr. Green searched the house, he noticed that everything was in place except for one thing. The basement door was wide open. He hesitated for a moment before descending the stairs. The basement was dark, the only light coming from a small window high on the wall. As Mr. Green reached the bottom of the stairs, he saw Tom lying on the floor, motionless. "Tom!" Mr. Green shouted, rushing over to him. He knelt beside Tom, checking for a pulse, but there was nothing. Tom was cold, his skin pale and lifeless. Mr. Green quickly called the police, his hands shaking as he explained what he had found. Within minutes, the house was swarming with officers and paramedics, but there was nothing they could do. Tom was gone. As the officers searched the house, they found no signs of foul play, no indication of what had happened to Tom. The only clue was the terrified expression frozen on his face, as if he had seen something that had scared him to death. The police investigated Mrs. Roberts' house as well, but found it empty, just as Tom had described. There was no sign of Mrs. Roberts, no trace of where she might have gone. The only thing they found was a single piece of paper tucked away in the corner of the basement. It was the same note that Tom had found, warning of the dangers that came at night. The neighborhood was never the same after that. Mrs. Roberts' house remained vacant, a dark, looming presence at the end of the cul-de-sac. The neighbors avoided it, whispering rumors of what had happened to Tom and Mrs. Roberts. Some claimed the house was haunted, that it was cursed, but no one dared to find out for sure. As for Tom, his death was ruled as natural causes, though no one could explain the look of terror on his face. The case was quietly closed, and life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be, with the memory of the disappearing neighbor and the horrors that had claimed her. But every now and then, on quiet, still nights, the neighbors would swear they could hear a faint whispering coming from Mrs. Roberts' house. And they would remember the note that Tom had found, the warning that had come too late. Don't stay, don't let them know you're here. And they would wonder who or what had really been responsible for the disappearance of Mrs. Roberts, and if it was still out there, waiting for its next victim.